Oh, hello and welcome back. It's 5 degrees in the workshop today, so I am freezing. This is an update video, and I'm going to start calling them odds and ends because it's usually a bit of an assortment of new things acquired, progress in the workshop, that kind of stuff. Generally, there won't be any machining, although there might be some smaller projects in these. But yeah, this is the first of the odds and ends videos. I've got a couple of personal things to mention, and then onto the workshop stuff. First one is the house that we had an offer in, that we had put an offer in on, and the offer was accepted. That was subject to finance, and the finance has not gone through. So, and we've had a couple of repeat attempts with changes to our mortgage application, and it still failed. So we've run out of time with the seller, and we're not going to get that house. Which is a bit of a blow, but we're saving fast, and what we're going to do is have another go in about 3 or 6 months, and hopefully the COVID stuff is behind us then, and the banks are a bit more confident with lending. I mean, our deposit is growing pretty quickly, so at the end of the year, or maybe start of next year, we'll be in a really good position. The other bit of personal news is that Emma from Emma's Spare Room Machine Shop has been instrumental in helping me to give up alcohol. I've been drinking too much for ages and spending too much, and it affects my sleep and my productivity and everything else. And I'm going on 6.5 weeks now, coming up 7, with no booze, and that's been brilliant. And it's going to be really excellent for the workshop here as well. I'm going to get more done, and the reason that's relevant to this channel, and the reason it's in this video, is because part of that process was Emma and I made a pact to save up for a piece of equipment. You know, any money I was wasting on that hobby has been sort of diverted and put to good use on this hobby. So the idea was that we save up and match each other's savings, and each buy our own D-bit grinder, and decal clone basically. And I've reached that goal. Now, I wasn't spending that much on booze, but I've added money to the savings. Had a bit of birthday money last month, and I've sold my old camera, and sold the belt sander, which wasn't working out for me. And yeah, so mine's bought and paid for, and in early to mid-August, it's on back order, in early to mid-August, you'll see it on the channel here, and you can laugh as I ruin some perfectly good HSS blanks trying to learn to sharpen them. So, but in seriousness, it will mean that my drill bits can receive a 4-facet grind, and my end mills can be renewed, the ends and sides of the end mills hopefully, and lathe tools can be made precisely, particularly things like threading tools and Acme threading bits and all that kind of stuff. It'll be a real benefit to the workshop, and I'm looking forward to getting it. And thank you, Emma, for your help and your encouragement. It's been probably been a life changer. So thanks again. Next item on the list was my tachometer. I bought a Swiss-made tachometer about 6 months ago, and maybe 9 months ago, and I've used it to sort of calibrate my VFD on the mill. I wanted to put a tachometer directly on the spindle of the mill and use it to sort of work out backwards what the VFD should show, work out what the multiplier is. And got the box here. It's made by Jacquet, Jacquet, and I'll show you some more close-up pictures of this on the table, but I wanted to show a little bit of footage of this thing working. It's a beautiful machine. It runs really smoothly. It's got 3 speed ranges, so it does 0 to 20 RPM, 0 to 200, and 0 to 2000. And it also has a wheel that can sort of tell you surface speed as well, which is pretty cool. No batteries, pure mechanical, Swiss made, and even all the spares are with it, and I got it for a bargain price on eBay. I do still have the digital tacho to install, but this was such a good price I had to bid on it, and I'm really pleased I did because it's a lovely tool. Well, this is the tachometer I was talking about. It's in this nice box. It's sort of velvet lined, very nice. The original documentation came with it, and this is the unit here. So it's very easy to read, and this acts as a kind of a brake on the thing, so doesn't matter which way you spin this spindle, the needle always moves clockwise, so it reminds me of a DTI in that sense. And when you're at a speed, if you click the brake, it sort of locks it at that position so you can remember the number. And it's got these 3 settings. So if I go down to the 1 setting, you know, I'm peaking out at about 150, 160 RPM there. If I change it to the 10 times, same sort of number, and the 100 times, I can barely make it register. And it has all these different fittings for the top. So there's a little drive dog, a little drive pin, and what you can do is connect this to like a center on the end of a shaft and use it to drive the mechanism of this machine. And it's got a female cup as well, so if you have a protrusion on the end or a small shaft, you can drive it directly. A small male protrusion, and this one's kind of a 3-faceted sort of a diamond shape. And this one, there's a particular gear setting that you have to use, but this one has a specific diameter, and using the red numbers on here, it reads up to 20 meters a minute. I think this will measure surface speed, so that's quite interesting. Anyway, I'll put one of these on and show it to you working on the mill, and I'll show you how I work out my RPMs. Right, well, we're at the top of the milling machine here. This is the top of my spindle, and I'm going to drive, just with friction, I'm going to drive the tachometer by the top of this nut. And I do have this set to RPM, and I have worked this out so that the factor, so that the multiplier is about right. So what I'm going to do is run this and try and get this to about 500 RPM. And that's close enough. And I've just set that to the 10 times multiplier. And hopefully you just saw then, I let it spin up and I used the brake button, and it tells us that we were doing 500 RPM. So previously this unit was telling me how many hertz were going through to the motor, but there's a custom gear on here that I've made, a custom pulley, sorry. So never quite sure exactly what RPM this spindle is doing. So measure it with this, work out the factor, and tell the VFD what factor to use when it's showing an RPM. And now I can, as long as I'm in the right gear, I can know what spindle speed I'm doing from the VFD, and I've got pretty good control over it. I get good torque down to about 200 RPM. Or I can spin it up to 1700 or so. And that's the same belt setting in here that I used for tapping a hole or driving a 3mm end mill, you know. So There's a really good range of power on this VFD. I've oversized the VFD, it's 3 horsepower, and this is a 2 horsepower motor, so works well. Next item was, yep, my Brown & Sharpe DTI arrived. The metric. This came from Texas. I bought it through eBay. It's as new, and behind the foam there are the original papers and things. And I'll give you a close-up of this as well. Really nice. Well, my little Brown & Sharpe indicator arrived, and here's a bit of a close-up of it on the bench. Just get that focused. So, yeah, Swiss made, metric, 1/100th measurements, and just very, very clean. If there's any scratches on this area, it's where I've put it into my indicator holder, and it just moves with no effort, super smoothly. When I compare it to my cheap knockoff Mitutoyo copy, I can sort of hear it and feel that it's not that nice. And this one was at one point, or a couple of times actually, this got into a stage where it was locked and I couldn't move it and I didn't want to break it. And when I look at it, it seems to have an off-center spindle as well, which affected things when I was trying to, I think it was affecting things when I was trying to indicate things in. Anyway, I'm still going to keep that one, but now I have one that I can use for best. And the bigger dial means I can, interpolate between these, or sorry, sort of estimate between these lines if I need a little bit more resolution. These are worth a fortune, and I'm really, really happy I got this for the price I got it for, and it will be treasured. So really, really chuffed with that. And along the line of sort of precise working and that kind of thing, I've dipped my toe into the world of scraping. So I've looked at videos from the Watch Wes Work channel, and I think Dale from Build Something Cool, and of course Matthew Look from Look Creations, Robin, Stefan. They've all got their own method of scraping, and I've sort of dipped my toe in and I've flattened the bottom of a couple of surface gauges that I've got, and I really like the process. So I managed to get them pretty flat, and just using an old file that I'd shaped the end of. So I'm sort of, the bug has bitten, I think. So I've got a plan to save up for a bigger granite plate. I'm using a little dinky one at the moment that I keep running out of space, but I'd like to get a proper one. No promises though. I also plan to make a bigger scraper, and I've got some carbide blanks that will sort of work with a clamp style scraper that I intend to make, and of course a slow speed diamond sharpening wheel. I've got a motor in mind. It's a 3-phase motor and a VFD, and I've bought a diamond disc. I just need to put the thing together. So that's possibly on the cards. I'm not going to make any promises. Still finishing the bandsaw, the DRO, and all the other stuff, and I'm still late on TMC. Right, well, what you see here is my entire scraping setup. I've got a tube of bearing blue, which is the kind of basically a grease with blue pigment in it. An old file that I've ground a radius on the end of, and I've flattened this face and a negative rake using just a hand diamond stone. I use a DNT Duo Sharp, which are fairly pricey. These are a woodworking tool really, but any diamond stone that's fine enough will work. And I've got an old offcut with a 1-inch hole in it for counting high spots. And this is too short really, and it's because it's just carbon steel, it loses its edge quickly, but it works. And here's a surface that I've scraped. Don't know how well that shows on camera, but this now sits down on the plate with no rocking, and it prints up very well. I'll show you a still picture of, I think this one. I think I've got a picture of this Starrett one before and after. And just going to see if I can get a bit better focus. I think that looks pretty much how I can see it. And my friend Peter had some castings made ages ago, and he had some left over, so I bought a straight edge and a square from him, and they're just a milled finish when I bought them. You can see the side of the straight edge here, and it's actually got a dovetail on one edge. That's not scraped yet. This is not scraped yet, but I have scraped in one face, and I've got that to the point where it prints very nicely. So yeah, the scraping bug has bitten, and as you can tell, this is a tiny little plate. It's very flat. It's certified flat to some high standard, and I forget the numbers now, but it's only 50mm thick, 300mm long, and 225 deep. And I've got my eyes on a nice 600 by 600 by 100mm. They're a lot of money, but I think it would be really useful for me. The other thing about the large plate is it's 848mm across the diagonal, which is a really nice size, because the ways of my lathe, being a permanent gap bed, the ways of my lathe are about 800mm long. So if I can find myself a straight edge that's in that size range, and if I own a plate that's the same size across the diagonal, maybe one day I can scrape in my lathe bed. You may notice that I picked up a flat diamond disc, which I bought with the intention of using for shaping and sharpening carbide for scraping. Well, I bought some 5/8 by 5/8 by 5/32 carbide blanks, which are just square blanks, and I bought a couple of boxes of those because they were cheap. They're made by Teledyne. It's probably not the perfect carbide grade for scraping, but it's certainly going to be better than an old file, and they were cheap enough. So that's about 16mm by 16mm by 4mm. So the idea is I should be able to shape and grind 8 edges on these, connect it to a clamp style scraper, and scrape all day without having to visit the sharpener. Please excuse the mess in this corner. This is part of the electronics area, and it's a total mess. But I've got a 1 horsepower 3-phase motor, which is way oversized for the task of a carbide diamond sharpener, a slow speed one. But if you have an oversized motor that's not being stressed at all, you can run it at quite a bit below its rated speed using a VFD. This is a 3-phase motor. VFD will drive it, and this VFD says 2 horsepower on it, but it's actually a 1 horsepower one. So I could clock the speed right down on here. I could have a flat back plate with my diamond on here, and have a station for sharpening carbide. The project I had chosen to make into my TMC 2020 project is a stretch for me, and I'm at the limit of what I'm sort of capable of doing with this particular project. And it's the solid indicator stand that Robin came up with the idea. Stefan sort of improved on it, I think, or refined it maybe, and drew it up and offered the drawings for free. Or offered the drawings through his Patreon, I don't know. So I've made some headway on it. I'll give you a close-up of this too. Basically, I've done the small piece that goes at the very end. It's got a dovetail and a split and a clamp that's reamed, that clamp hole. It's got a flexure that's 1mm thick, a little tenon on the end, threaded cross holes and a threaded hole for flexure adjust and all that kind of stuff. So there's sort of 10 little features on something that's 35mm long. So that's taken ages. And I've got all the materials put to one side to make the rest of it. But at the time of recording, it's 11 o'clock on the 11th of July, and I've got less than 3 weeks to finish it, and I'm probably a quarter of the way into it. So that ain't going to happen, not in time. It's going to happen on the channel, but I'm not going to make it my TMC project. Instead, I'm going to pick something simpler that I can do in a week or so, and start again, sort of switch gears, start again, because I really want to get a TMC video out there. Well, given that I'm not going to use my solid indicator stand as my TMC project, it's not a secret anymore, and I can show you a little bit of my progress. This is the design. If you go and search through Stefan Gottswinter's back catalogue, you can find some videos where he makes the same thing to a better standard. But basically, where I'm up to so far is I've gathered the materials. I've got some bronze for the knobs, some steel for the clamps, some annealed vice jaws, which are these 2 square pieces, and I bought some bearings. Just going to try and focus here. This bearing I've hard bored using a carbide end mill, and this gets stuck on the end of this. Just trying to do this through the camera. I get stuck on the end of this tenon, and this becomes part of a ball joint. And this is really the only piece I've completed. It's one of the fiddly pieces. It's got a couple of saw slits, a very thin flexure, a cross clamp which is threaded, and this threaded hole actually pushes this flexure apart. And these ball bearings, I bought these so I can press one into this hole here and then tack it from the outside with a TIG weld. So the idea of this piece is it accommodates a dovetail type clamping mechanism, a round shaft clamp, and it accommodates a fine adjust where the leverage is in the user's advantage, and there's a ball on the end which gets clamped, and the rest of the mechanism is there. So I'm going to work on this over the next few weeks, and I think if I stop it from being my TMC project, that takes away some of the pressure, and I can relax a little bit. Another thing that came up was you've probably seen me break at least one tap on the channel, and that's partly because I'm sort of cheating with tap drill sizes, sort of using the nearest imperial. I use these little Starrett charts of using the nearest imperial size, and it isn't that good. I've got 0.5mm drill bits at the moment, and sometimes you need 3.3 or 8.75 and this kind of thing. And if you choose the size below, you've got extra work for the tap to do. You break taps. If you choose the size above, you don't have as much thread engagement, and so you end up with a sloppy, you end up with a weaker thread or a sloppier thread. So anyway, long story short, I bought myself a set of 1 to 6mm 0.1mm increments, so a fractional drill bit set, and these are the cobalt ones. And most of them that are above maybe 3mm, maybe 3.2mm, are a 4-facet grind, so that's really nice. So I'm a real fan of that grind, and I'm a real fan of cobalt drills, and now I've got the full range, I should be less prone to breaking taps. What else is on the list here? Yeah, I've been having a bit of a spring clean in the middle of winter, and I got rid of a lot of materials that I just can't use. I've been hoarding any and all metals that I can get my hands on for years, and it's not very efficient. Part of my collection was things like old bed frames and scaffold tubes, lots of galvanized stuff which I'm unlikely to machine, I'm extremely unlikely to weld it because it's poisonous fumes. And so I've been rationalising my metal stock. I've made some improvements to my metal storage cart, put some proper wheels on it, put a trolley handle on the back so I can push it around, added more divisions, and I'll show you a picture of that. In fact, I've given the whole place a bit of a clean up, as I was saying, so what I'll do is I'll give you a walk around just with the camera phone, because it's got a better autofocus. I'll give you a walk around the workshop because I've never given a workshop tour. And if there's any interest, comment below if you're interested. If there's any interest, I'll do sort of a dedicated workshop tour video where I talk about each machine, if you like. What else have I got? I think that's about it. In all likelihood, the project that I'll do for my TMC 2020 is probably a mill project. It will be, I suspect it will be some hold down clamps for my large grinding vise. I've got a machine vise on the mill and it's good, but it's not perfect. And I know that the grinding vise, all the faces are completely parallel and square and super flat. And I bought that vise from new and I really, really like the vise. It's a bit small for the mill, but I'm working on small things at the moment, so it's all good. So yeah, that's something I can knock out in a day or two, make a video for and make a TMC video. So stay tuned for that. Okay, I think that's it for this episode of Odds and Ends. Thank you, of course, to viewers, subscribers and Patreons, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.